all the great intellectuals find their main ideas on the streets. The questions that they were answering were questions that people would talk during birthday parties and during drinking evenings. What is the most important questions for young men and women? Everything that relates to the body, sexuality, future life together, parenting, having children. This is love.
Hello friends of Collegium Wojtylianum, my name is Karolina Besnic. I'm a researcher at the Collegium Wojtylianum, and today I'm joined by my friend Father Jarosław Kupczak, who is an expert on the theology and the philosophy of Karol Wojtyła, yes?
Well, some people say that.
Father Kupczak is a professor at the Pontifical University of John Paul II here in Krakow. This is where I met Father Kupczak at his course on John Paul II's Theology of the Body. This course was taught in English, and actually it's based on a book that's very important, I think, for modern Catholicism. Love and Responsibility was the beginning. We can kind of understand it as the origins, perhaps, of this book. And then later emerged Theology of the Body. How can we really talk about this, Father Kupczak, this idea of like, there was love and responsibility, which is very well known in its own right. And then we have Theology of the Body, and there's a connection, a very tangible connection. But could you give us some background on how this connection emerged?
Yes, thank you for the invitation and pleasure talking to you. In my opinion, every great philosopher and great theologian, all the great intellectuals find their main ideas on the streets. In order to, if we think about all the great thinkers in the history of especially Western thought, people like Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas, and later Immanuel Kant, they created their philosophies or theologies, but the questions that they were answering were questions of ordinary people, the questions of culture. The questions that people would talk during birthday parties and during drinking evenings. And I think the same happened with the theology of the body. We actually are recording our conversation in St. Florian Parish, a very important place in the landscape and in the cultural kind of paysage of Krakow, because it was here that Wojtyła started his campus ministry in late 1940s, early 1950s. And this campus ministry stayed with him for the rest of his life. However, the main people that Wojtyła worked with here in St. Florian Parish were university students. And of course, what is the most important questions for young men and women in their 20s? Probably you should answer this question, but I think we may agree that this is love. This is everything that relates to the man-woman relationship, to the body, sexuality, thinking about future life together, thinking about parenting, having children. So this was the street where Wojtyła found the most important question with which he was struggling to the end of his life.
So in a way, we can understand Theology of the Body is kind of an organic book, yeah? It came from a very specific motivation, which was to answer the questions that were around him being continuously asked. Within this idea, I think it's absolutely fascinating how we see this book, Theology of the Body. It continues to be relevant till now, very much like Love and Responsibility. And its full title, can you remind us? It's Theology of the Body.
Well, the full title really changed in the course of the history of this book. Why? Because the book was written before Karol Wojtyła became Pope. Mm-hmm. So the book was supposed to be his mature account of the topics that he earlier treated in Love and Responsibility, his philosophical book from late 1950s. So the first title of the manual that he gave to the manuscript that he was writing in Krakow was really Theology of the Body. Later, when the first Polish edition was published in early 1980s, it was Men and Women, He Created Them. And the subtitle was, if I recall correctly, The Sacramentality of Marriage.
So with this title, Men and Women, He Created Them, this is what I would like to get into is how does this title reflect the contents of the book? And how do the contents of Theology of the Body, Men and Women, He Created Them, how does this reflect what he was thinking? The contents, where do they go? What are the ideas that are given to us inside of this book?
Yeah, well, of course, Men and Women, He Created Them. It is quotation from the first description of creation from the book of Genesis. It's the first chapter of Genesis. So in this title captures really Wojtyła's intent. Wojtyła wants to present in his Theology of the Body a theological anthropology concentrated mostly on the issues that we have already talked about. Body, sexuality, sex, gender, man-woman relationship, parenting, child. So these are the main subjects of the book, of the Theology of the Body. I said that this is theological anthropology. So this is anthropology, the knowledge about the human person as man and woman, but theological, which is treated very explicitly as having theological roots, as flowing from the divine revelation. That's the difference between Theology of the Body and his philosophical book, Love and Responsibility, that was written about 16 years earlier.
And we can see this continuation between philosophy and theology. They go together.
Very much.
One of the ideas that really gets to me comes again with this title, Men and Women, He Created Them. Wojtyła is kind of a man, I believe, in a way we can say he was ahead of his times. He has a very interesting discourse on gender, men and women and equality. And I think that this discourse continues to be vital for understanding even now, because we can say in modern times that there's equality between men and women, but then we also run a risk of discounting the other gender. As we look for women's rights and women's identity, we risk saying, but we don't need the men because we can do it ourselves. And the same goes for men in modern times, women are just like an extra. So how can we understand Wojtyła's understanding of equality? Because it was men and women created. It wasn't men and women, it was together.
Yeah, this is extremely important question that really delves into the whole history of Western culture, because the two concepts, equality and difference, played always very important role in describing the relationship between man and woman. If we go back to the ancient times, we have two teachers from the Athenian Academy. Plato, the founder, he was absolutely convinced that men and women are equal. But at the same time, he thought that there was no real difference between men and women. So in his ascribing different social roles in his republic, he would ascribe exactly the same roles to men and women, including the military service and other services inside the republic. As a matter of fact, denying the sexual difference between men and women led Plato to be a totalitarian, to destroy the family. And as we recall, Plato thought that it is the state or it is the polis that is supposed to raise children together, not the family, but the polis. The student of Plato, great Aristotle, he was a biologist. So he knew that the differences between men and women are real, not only in terms of the bodily differences, however. So there was a difference between men and women in Aristotle, but not equality. So for Aristotle, he thought the difference goes hand in hand with a certain hierarchy. The hierarchy was obvious. It is man who is superior, and woman is 90% of a man, right? So men, unfortunately, it is the Aristotle concept of man and woman that became a standard reading of gender up to the modern times, throughout the whole ancient and medieval period. So Wojtyła takes up a subject, a very ancient subject. What is Wojtyła's solution? First, there is no question that between men and women there is equality in dignity, because it's very obvious from the Bible, from the Christian revelation. But there is also a difference, there is also a real difference. So Wojtyła expresses a Christian notion of what we would call a complementarity of the sexes. We are different, we are equal, and what's even more important, the difference between men and women can be appreciated and understood only if we take femininity and masculinity together, right? After all, in a sense, masculine sexuality doesn't make a sense in itself. Only if we compare men's body with woman's body, it all makes sense, right? How it should work. The same with the woman's body and woman's gender. So I believe that the concept of complementarity of the sexes and complementary value of masculinity and femininity, it's really a prophetic sign that still has to play itself in the future.
Oh, Father, this is fascinating. Thank you. And with this, we can see, as you said, there's a man and there's woman and there's complementarity. But then also in this equation, there's this overarching presence of God throughout the relationship. And on one side, we can say that theology of the body has this theological posing of God within, not posing, but this presence of God within the relationship of the man and the woman. But then on the other side, how can we understand this theological discourse within the discussion of men and women in relationships?
Well, the simplest word that comes to my mind is broken. We are all broken. So we have our desires, we have our dreams, we have our hope for fulfillment and for the happiness. But at the same time, we live in the broken world, in the corrupt culture, and we know from our own experience that we are broke. We very often, as Saint Paul, the apostle, have written, we know what to do very often, but we do not have the force, the internal power to live the life as we should do it. So this brokenness of human nature, brokenness of human relations, brokenness of human culture in which we live, this is the whole plan for God's action. That this is why we need what Saint Paul Apostle again has called the redemption of our bodies. And in a sense, the whole sacramentality of marriage, if we talk about sacramentality of marriage, we think about a proper context in which human couples, by the grace of God, can live up to the expectations and can live up to the moral norms that the Church sets before them. In other words, we can, in the broken world, we cannot live a fully human life without the grace.
So, Father, thank you very much. And this brings me to my final question regarding the content of Theology of the Body, which is, we've discussed men and women who were inherently dignified, who are created by God, and they're equal, they complement each other, and within their relationship, there's the presence of God. I encourage everybody to read Theology of the Body. It's an integral part of understanding yourself as a child of God, and then also understanding yourself if you're someone thinking of getting married or you are married, understanding what marriage and the role of the other person in your life plays with your relationship to God. But Father, I'd like to ask you, for our viewers, what is the main message that you hope people take away from Not Love and Responsibility, from Theology of the Body? What is the main message, the main idea that you think every person should and can take away from this book?
That's a simple question, but this is a very difficult question, because Theology of the Body is really about men and women. So primarily is about human marriage. It's about human vocation to love. But more importantly, Theology of the Body proposes to every one of us, to every Christian, but also to every person, something broader, which John Paul II calls a hermeneutics of love. What is hermeneutics of love? Hermeneutics of love is such an understanding of human life and such a way of looking at everything that we do with the presupposition that only in the light of God's love and vocation to human love, human life makes sense. So hermeneutics of love is the only full understanding of human life in which all the pieces of the puzzle that we deal with every day, work, money, career, body, pleasure, culture, everything comes together, but only inside a hermeneutics of love. So I think hermeneutics of divine love and hermeneutics of human life. So I think if I would have to say just two words, just one sentence about Theology of the Body, this would be the sentence.
Father Kupczak, I have a feeling that this discussion is going to have to keep on going, because I have more questions for you, and I think our viewers also have more questions and will have more questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you, if you have any questions, please comment on this video or send this message at our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram accounts, and let us know what you would like to ask Father Kupczak. Father Kupczak, would you like to join me again sometime in the future?
With pleasure.
So we're ready for your questions, and we're ready to continue this discussion, because I think you'll agree with me, Father, Wojtyła's issues discussed in Theology of the Body continue to be relevant today, and they continue to be relevant to each person as we try to understand our role in this world as children of God and as members of the human race. So while we try to understand this, why don't you come with me? We'll ask Father Kupczak for a few ideas, and we'll let Wojtyła guide us on our way. Thank you very much, and we will see you soon.